Hello everyone and welcome back to the Great Book of Grudges. My name is Nathan and today we're back with another Total War Warhammer video. Today we'll be talking about what a Clan MOULDER DLC pack would look like, so without further ado, let's begin. Clan MOULDER is one of the 4 great Skaven clans. They specialize in breeding, mutating, and creating of monsters. In truth, any horrible monstrosity used by the Skaven, such as rat ogres or hell pit abominations, are actually created by Clan MOULDER. But these are not the only monstrosities they create. While Clan MOULDER's armies do feature clan rats and all generic type of Skaven units, they also have their own specialized forces. So let's start looking at them now. First we have the giant rats. They're exactly what their name explains them to be, but with a few minor differences. They're not just big rats. Giant rats are actually about the size of a large dog and horribly mutated by the use of warpstone. These are extremely ravenous beings which are quick to attack anything that their packmaster points them to. They're not exactly the best close combat unit, however giant rats do prove themselves to be very useful purely because they're extremely cheap. Here you would be fielding massive swarms of rats and quickly overwhelming your enemies. Next we look towards the wolf rats, pretty much the same thing as giant rats but far larger and more expensive. You'd be using these as carbon copies to, for example, the Chaos Warhounds. They're pretty much exactly the same thing, fast moving units that you can use to war machine hunt or flank enemies through the side. Nothing too great about them, but hey, it's always good to have something like that in your armies. Quickly going back to the giant rat, we're going to look towards the brood horror. In some rare occasions, giant rats can horribly mutate, even more so than they are now. The giant rat will lose all sense of reality and start devouring its litter mates and grow and grow and grow. Eventually, the giant rat mutates to the point that it is a horrible mass of flesh and brute strength known as the brood horror. Many Skaven warlords seek brood horrors for their own purposes to use them as mounts. Naturally, such disgusting beings are not cheap, and only the richest of Skaven warlords can actually purchase a brood horror from Clan MOULDER. And now for the last variant of the giant rat, the Great Pox Rat. Giant rats seem to be test subjects in Clan MOULDER's domain very often. The Great Pox Rat is once again a former giant rat who was further mutated quite heavily. They grow to a very large size, usually around the size of a horse. They are highly coveted to be mounts themselves, for they are extremely fast and very durable in combat. The only bad side about this is they're very highly aggressive and have been known to turn upon their rider. Unfortunately, it's not known to see squads of Great Pox Rats, instead you just see them as mounts, so we're going to start moving on towards the next unit. Rat ogres are a very common sight within the armies of Clan MOULDER. We already have 2 variants in the game, which is the standard rat ogre and the rat ogre bonebreaker, which acts as a mount. But there are a few other variants that we may see in a Clan MOULDER DLC. First we have the armored rat ogre. Pretty much the same as a standard rat ogre, just heavily armored. These would naturally be a bit slower, but still very powerful in close combat. Next we'd see the mutant rat ogre. Standard rat ogres are already imposing enough, but now imagine them with extra limbs, body parts, and maybe even hyper intelligent ones. These rat ogres would be naturally a bit tougher considering the fact that they've had extra exposure to warpstone, but generally you'd be using them the same as standard rat ogres. The thing about Clan MOULDER is they just wanted to create more and more monsters, so a lot of them seem the same, and they essentially are, but to the Skaven, they're different. But with that we look towards another type of rat ogre, the augmented rat ogre. This is the perfect combination of flesh and machine, where rat ogres are enhanced with technology to make them more powerful, for example having warp fire throwers attached to them. Yes, this is very similar to the Storm Fiends, but the Storm Fiends themselves were the perfected variant. The augmented rat ogre was pretty much just a beta test. But in the Skaven mind, if it still somewhat works and can still do damage, why not just use it? Just a quick note about the Storm Fiends, yes, they would count as a Clan MOULDER unit, however, I've already covered them in a End Times scenario DLC for the Skaven, and given the fact that they were an End Times unit, it's more than likely that we'll actually see them during an End Times DLC rather than just a generic Clan MOULDER DLC. But with that, it's good news guys, because we're actually moving to unique units. Yes, there are some unique units that were featured in White Dwarf magazine and so on, so we're actually going to look towards them now. First, we have the Burrowing Behemoth. These are the tunnel diggers of the Skaven and their empire. These giant monstrosities are actually blind, but just because they can't see doesn't mean that they're not terrifying in battle. Their heightened sense of smell will lead them towards their prey, and naturally obviously some packmasters can just prod them along. Think of these creatures as very similar to hell pit abominations, however their difference would be that they wouldn't be so large in terms of mass, but they would be in terms of length. They would also be very fast too, considering that they would need to be able to dig tunnels very quickly for the Skaven to actually expand their empire. And now for a personal favorite of mine, these are the Chimera rats. They're just giant rat hydras, they're super cool, I love the look of them. They're actually from a White Dwarf issue that there was a conversion and some rules were created for it, but just see it as a hydra. It'll have multiple heads, it'll be a gigantic rat, and it can also spit out warp fire. If this gets included into the DLC, use it exactly the same way as you would use a Dark Elf Hydra. It's pretty much the exact same thing. But visually it looks amazing. I am actually trying to kit bash one myself as a model. They look absolutely awesome, and it's exactly what type of weird monstrosities you expect coming out from Hell Pit. For the last creation, we have the Throtlings, which really they're a very strange unit, and I don't think they'd actually be created into Total War Warhammer, considering the fact that they are weird. I mean, that's all I can really call them. They don't really have a set model because they're another kit bash thing from a White Dwarf issue, but they just don't make any sense lore-wise because they don't really have a shape or form. Essentially, Throtlings can be many things, failed experiments that somehow still survive. They don't really have much uses, but they're there. They're actually described as Throt the Unclean's side projects. They don't really have anything of complete use, and they would probably act like swarms, so we probably won't see them as units. But with that, we're actually done looking towards the monsters, and now we look towards the more humanoid type of units. First up is the Flayer Kin. These are Chaos Marauders who have been gifted to the Skaven. All sense of humanity from these Marauders has long been lost. They are more like living weapons than anything else. These units, if implemented into the game, should be unbreakable, as after spending even a small amount of time in Hell Pit to be a test subject for the Master Mutators, the last remaining remnants of your humanity, however little you had, is surely gone. We can't talk about a Clan Moulder DLC without talking about Packmasters. These are the trainers and handlers of the beast that we've just been speaking about, so it would actually make sense to actually have them as a unit. They would probably be in small squads, very similar to how the weapons teams are currently treated as, and maybe give a leadership bonus to any monsters they might be close to. They are not competent fighters whatsoever and should be seen as a buff unit. Just maybe giving leadership bonuses to the monsters of Clan Moulder if they're very close to them. It could also be seen that we might actually see the Packmasters as a hero choice instead, which does make a lot of sense because that way they could actually be buffer units. But now we look to a possible Lord choice, which would be the Master Mutators themselves. These are the ingenious minds that actually create the monsters in Hell Pit. These Lord choices wouldn't be good in close combat and they wouldn't wield any magic, but instead they would actually be buff type heroes, giving bonuses to any monsters in your army. This would actually give you more incentive to field pure monster armies, which would be really cool considering the fact that obviously Clan Moulder is based around monsters. But now we're going to look towards legendary lords and heroes. First up, we have perhaps the most famous Master Mutator, Throt the Unclean. Throt would be the highlight for this DLC pack, considering the fact that he's one of the most famous Master Mutators, he's also one of the 9 Lords of Hell Pit, he has created hundreds if not thousands of terrifying monstrosities. Throt is horrendously strong, he's actually been known to pin down rat ogres without any trouble, and he's also famous on the tabletop where he can actually devour one, which has caused many problems to me in games before. Throt himself would be a close combat melee lord, which would also buff up the monsters in your army. He'd be a Master Mutator in all intents and purposes, but also just being in the front line killing anything. He should also have very large bonuses against large creatures, considering the fact that he can pin them down without a problem, but in most cases, you would be there in front just having him flanked around by some rat ogres and just breaking enemy lines. There are 2 other famous characters in Clan Moulder which we could probably see as legendary heroes if Creative Assembly want to be nice to us in terms of that. First up is Squeal Nortooth, who is a Packmaster, he is rather famously known to be leading armies of giant rats and rat ogres, giving them loads of buffs such as poison attacks and so on. It would actually be kind of cool to see him. I used to use him every now and then on the tabletop, and yeah, he's very situational, but yeah, I mean, giant rats were cheap as it was, giving them poison attacks just made them hilarious. And lastly, we have Gorich, a rather interesting rat ogre, mainly because it is actually not essentially a rat ogre in a certain way. So Gorich is a rat ogre for all intents and purposes, it's a rat ogre body, but the brain is that of a Norscan berserker. Yes, apparently the Skaven know how to actually transplant brains and actually have them functioning. It's weird lore, but hey, this is Warhammer, you know, it's supposed to be weird and ridiculous. I for one would be really happy to see at least one hero choice for a rat ogre. It would be incredibly unique because maybe Gorich could be the only recruitable rat ogre hero. so you'd have to use him wisely and know where to position him. But those are pretty much the units that could be implemented for a Clan Moulder DLC. What do you guys think? Are there any other units that you'd like to see in for a Clan Moulder DLC? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below and let's start a little bit of discussion, shall we? But with that, my friends, we've come to the end of our video. Thank you so much for watching. If you did enjoy the video, might I suggest giving the video a like, or even subscribing to the channel, as it really does help us out. In the description link below, we have various links to social media platforms such as Facebook, Instagram, and Discord, where you can get in contact with the Great Book team. Also in the description link below is an affiliate link with Element Games where you could buy loads of hobby-based products, not just Warhammer, for 10 to 25% off. Purchasing using that link and also using our special code, which is also in the description, supports the channel at no extra cost to you, which we think is rather cool. A big thank you to our patrons. Your support means the world to us. Honestly, it's amazing that people want to help a small channel grow and get to a higher level of quality for content. A big thank you to our patron Gibraltar LUSC for subscribing to us at our Fane level. Honestly, mate, you're awesome and we can't thank you enough. And a big thank you to all of you for liking, sharing, commenting on the videos. Honestly, the channel is growing more and more, and I'm trying to keep up to try and reply to as many of you as possible. It's actually getting really tough now because there's so many people actually liking and commenting and stuff, but I'm trying my best, guys, and honestly, I can't thank you guys enough. The channel's growing like massively lately. I don't understand why, but it's really cool to have you guys with us and just being able to talk about Warhammer with people all around the world. It's amazing. But with that, my friends, thank you so much once again, and we shall see you all again very, very soon. Have a good day.